Let's Get Printing with Zach Dewhurst is brought to you by DecoNetwork. DecoNetwork software is designed for the apparel decoration industry to keep staff and equipment running smoothly. Learn more at DecoNetwork.com.
Hi and hello, it's Zach Dewhurst. This week's episode is with Brian Walker of iGroup Technologies. Brian has been in the industry for several decades and is an expert when it comes to direct-to-garment pre-treat and just direct-to-garment printing in general. Brian, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background and some of your different brands that you own.
I appreciate you having us on the podcast today, Zach. The funny thing is I've been in the industry longer than you've probably been alive. And that's the scary part. I got started back in the mid 1980s while I was still in high school. Got into screen printing in the graphic arts program. And unfortunately, it's like the Hotel California. Once you check into this industry, you can't check out. So I, through the years, had my own screen printing business. We ended up, it was actually 1999. I remember traveling to a trade show in Chicago and saw the first direct-to-garment printer. And I go, that's the future. I can see where this is going. From that point, we just sort of kept tabs on it. And during that time, we started sort of researching and doing a lot of, I guess, analysis of direct-to-garment in the early days, 2004, 5, I guess it would be 2005 and 2006. That's when we landed a gig selling the original Brother GT541. Brother saw the value in our analysis of comparison between screen printing, direct-to-garment printing, and realistically back then, it was mainly just CMYK printing on white and light colored garments. But through all that analysis, we ended up getting a gig selling the Brother equipment and really diving into direct-to-garment. And eventually somebody prompted us and we developed a pre-treatment machine for the white ink that was coming out with the Brother printers. And we developed the world's first touchscreen pre-treatment machine with a multi-nozzle setup back around 2007, 2008. Did a lot of innovation there. And everything just sort of kept growing from there. We developed more pre-treat machines, got more involved with the industry. Eventually in 2013, created the Image Armor line of pre-treatments. And from there, that just kept expanding. So now we have a whole line, and we're actually worldwide with that, the pre-treatments, and now also inks for pretty much all of the direct-to-garment printers available on the market. And then the next logical step was, because everybody hates pre-treating, because it's just a really not a fun process. We had the bright idea of, I say that sarcastically, in 2014, it went up on our whiteboard for the RTP Apparel shirts, which were fully pre-treated shirts. We weren't the official first person to, or company to do pre-treated shirts. I would give that honor to Chuck Northcutt. But we were the first to bring it in a commercial aspect to a wider audience, and we're able to really figure it out and make it happen. So the RTP line we've introduced in 2016 and have been working on improving that and expanding it since that time. So we sort of created a vertically integrated company from good foundation on garment decorating and having my own shop for a long time, and then just got into direct-to-garment and have been vertically integrating the equipment, the supplies, and now the shirts that are ready to print. So unfortunately, how old are you, Zach?
I am 31, so I was born in '89.
Yeah, I was doing this before you were even thought of. So the scary thing is it doesn't seem like it that we've been doing it that long, but 35-ish years, it's like, wow, that makes me the old guy in the room now.
Well, it was 10 years ago that you sold me my brother DTG printer, which I think was maybe your last printer that you sold because brother told you to focus on the pre-treat because they needed it that badly for someone to come up with equipment and
For
pre-treat solution itself to make their printers sing. It's kind of like when I build a website for someone. You can have the most beautiful looking website, but if no one ever comes to it, it's all for nothing. I mean, they go hand in hand. And pre-treat becomes before the act of direct to garment printing. So not only though by focusing on the pre-treat side of things and being the go-to for it for Brother, I know that Epson then came in after Brother, and there's a few other DTG manufacturers, and all of your pre-treat works great with all of them. And obviously, the equipment that you sell, the Viper, I know you have 3 different types for different size shops. That's really what makes the direct to garment side of things work, correct? I mean,
Yeah,
like all decoration processes in our industry, I think, our barriers of entry into this industry are not very high. I mean, I say that because compared to a lot of businesses, it's just not that high to get started. Um, but when you get started, you a lot of shops I feel don't account for how much problem solving, how much you're often going to use the scientific method. I often think, I have a problem. I'm not getting the results. What is my hypothesis on the problem? We need to run an experiment to test it, come to our conclusion, and implement it. And so there's so many different variables that go into each decoration process. And with direct to garment printing, I bet a lot of shops are often pulling out their hair, wanting better results, and not realizing it all starts with the pre-treat. It's obviously the first step of the process. What's your take on like kind of some of the most common mistakes and what are shops often overthinking or not doing that they immediately, by taking the time to just do a couple different things or just trying some different solutions, what results they can get?
well, it's just a t-shirt, right? You're printing a shirt, it should be easy. Yeah, that's the concept. And like you said, the barrier to entry is relatively low. The printers, depending on your focus, can be either inexpensive or really expensive. Typically you're going to be 12, 15 grand to 25, 30 grand for mid-range. And then you can spend several $100,000, which most small shops are never going to be in that position. But when you factor in all your heat presses, pre-treat machines and stuff like that, yes, it can, you're talking 25, 30 plus $1,000, which is to start a business relatively, like you said, a low barrier to entry. The big thing that most people overlook is, oh, well, I spent, 15 or 20, 25,000 on this printer. I don't have the extra money for, say, a pre-treat machine, so I'll just do it by hand. And pre-treatment, like you said, I do need to step back and say, brother, basically, when we started releasing our pre-treatments, they did let us sort of focus on the machines, but the pre-treatments, was it because the OEMs have their own pre-treatments, and I didn't want there to be any misconceptions about this. We do compete with Brother, which I think is part of the reason why we really don't sell Brother anymore, because we do compete against them. And, that's part of their revenue stream. But so we ended up, after we weren't a brother distributor anymore, really focused on the pretreat machines, the pretreatments, and then inks, which is really the lifeblood of direct-to-garment printers. So that sort of put a strain on that relationship, but it was good because it allowed us to focus on what we really do best. And I appreciate that time selling all their equipment because it was a great experience, and it's really good equipment in that. And since then, we've had a chance to work with a lot of other garment printers and manufacturers. And it's funny because from when you bought your printer to today, you've seen the industry change completely several times over. The improvements in not just printers, but inks and the pre-treating process itself. And what most people don't, when they get started, realize is, oh, it's just a t-shirt. It should be easy, right? It comes down to, I call it the foundation, and joke about it. The pre-treating process nobody likes. It can be messy if you don't do it right, but there's several factors. If you do the pre-treating process correctly and you get a good foundation on the shirt for the white ink to sit on, you can produce phenomenal looking garments. Then it comes down to is how good is your artwork. You know, garbage in, garbage out applies to this like anything else. But you can make that garbage look really good. You know, then you can, as long as you have that good foundation on the pre-treat side, then you can really focus on the artwork and making phenomenal looking shirts. But it comes down to pre-treating correctly, which is what we've tried to help with on the Pretreat machines side with our Viper line of Pretreat machines. You can spray a shirt by hand. You can do that, but it's very difficult to repeatedly do that over and over and over and get good results every time because you don't know exactly how much pre-treatment you're applying to that shirt. And that's one of the biggest things I think when people get into this industry is they overlook, they're like, oh, I just spent all this money on a printer. I don't want to spend $1,500, $3 grand, $6 grand more on a pre-treat machine. That's wasteful. I can do it by hand. And you're only as good as the tools that you have. And that's how we try to explain it to everybody is you can do it without a machine, but after you do that for a while, and I've seen this in my own life, even when I had a shop, you know, you go, oh, you know, I upgraded from this little light box exposing a screen and screen printing to a professional vacuum frame unit. And it's like, oh my God, how did we ever survive without this?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing in pre-treatment. So I always highly recommend people getting started off on the right foot with the pre-treatment side, because 80% of your problems stem back to in direct-to-garment printing, basically stem back to pre-treatment and the improper application or the wrong shirt. It all ties into the pre-treating process. The other 20% is environmental factors. You know, the first thing people like to do is blame the printer, and it's typically not. I mean, yes, there are legitimate cases where it might be the printer, but a lot of it just comes down to the process, what you're doing and how you're doing it on the pre-treating side. And it's the most overlooked, unglamorous portion of the process, but that's what allows you to produce the most beautiful product in the end when you do it correctly.
And for some people who probably don't even understand, listening, that aren't familiar with DTG, in order for us to be able to lay down typically white ink, when you're DTGing something, you're going to lay down a white underbase and then you CMYK your color. If you're printing onto a white shirt, you obviously don't have to drop a white underbase. You don't have to pre-treat a white shirt, technically. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the value in that, but in order for you to be able to put that ink from a direct-to-garment printer directly onto the shirt, you got to prep it, and it's like priming a wall in a way. You're making it possible to let that water-based ink properly absorb into the garment itself. And pre-treating, so it's allowing that ink to actually lay down there properly. But it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, it's what will really help the print hold up in the wash. If you're putting not the correct amount of pre-treat down, it doesn't matter what it looks like. And that's, I think, a common mistake a lot of shops, and I see it with transfer, I see it with every process, even screen printing. Well, it looked great when it left the shop. Well, did you cure everything properly? Because no one has put any durability or washing anything to that garment yet. A lot of things look great when it comes off the conveyor dryer. But if all of the variables weren't actually correct during the process, the results of time, garments are made to be washed and worn several times. It's not a one-off. So what it is, so that's why you mentioned doing it by hand. It's impossible to get the correct amount of pre-treat down onto a garment, and every garment and every color often need different amounts of pre-treat to get the best results. When you're pre-treating a black shirt, it's a different amount of pre-treat than printing the sky blue shirt, for example.
And I will take that one step further. Depending on the quality of the shirt,
oh yes,
will require different amounts of pre-treatment. Now, and we've done some I don't want to say profile tests, but I wrote an article a while back that's on the imagearmorpt.com website that we show 3 different shirts and the amount of pre-treatment with our Viper Max Pretreat machine. If anybody in the audience is familiar with screen printing and they're familiar with the screen exposure test, that's where you would expose a screen for incremental time periods to determine the correct amount of exposure time for that screen, basically. So you can get the optimal stencil for screen printing. We do something similar, and you can do this by hand, but it's easier with the machine, where we'll lay down a vertical stripe on the shirt, but there's 6 of them, and there's 6 different lay down amounts. So we might do 10 grams, 15, 20, 25, 30, and 35 grams of pre-treatment across the shirt. Then we can print, once we cure that, we can print a white box across the shirt to find the most optimal amount of pre-treatment for that garment. And what you're looking for is where the white is super bright white, because if you don't have enough pre-treatment, the ink is going to soak into the shirt, and you see the fibers, and it's just not a bright white. It's, no pre-treatment, you'll know, because the ink just soaks into the shirt, and you can sort of maybe see a little bit of a ghost of where the image is or should be. Too little pre-treatment, the white's not bright enough. You can over-apply pre-treatment, which can do one of two, it can do several things. Too much pre-treatment can decrease washability depending on the pre-treatment and ink set. But a lot of times you're just wasting pre-treatment. So you want to find that optimal point where you get great white without any incremental increase in the opacity and the whiteness. And that's sort of your sweet spot. So you can print this white bar across it. And where you do not see that white opacity increase is technically where the amount of pre-treatment you want. On one shirt, we were able to do a phenomenal white with just 11, 12 grams of pre-treatment. The same exact amount of pre-treatment across the board on these 3 different shirts. One was roughly 25 grams, and another was 35 grams of pre-treatment. Wow. On a quote unquote black shirt. So the quality of the shirt affects it, the color of the shirt affects it, because on a light gray, you don't need as much pre-treatment as you would on a black shirt, because you're not trying to hide the darkness of the dyes of the shirt, right? But at the same point, if you have a crappy or lower quality gray shirt, it's going to require more pre-treatment than a 30 or 32 singles, really nice tight knit weave athletic gray shirt. Now, the way I typically explain it is this. Darker colored shirts require more pre-treatment than lighter colored shirts. Typically, a lighter weight shirt, which sometimes will be a higher quality shirt, requires less pre-treatment than a heavier shirt because there's more fiber. Typically, you're going to have more absorbency and stuff like that. So a dark shirt, heavy shirt is going to require more pre-treatment than a lighter colored shirt, lighter weight shirt. And it's sort of a sliding scale, and it all depends. And that's why you do have to do some testing. And a lot of people just want that catch-all. And like you said earlier about the scientific approach, it's just a t-shirt. We should be able to print it, right? It should be easy. There actually is a little bit of science and a little bit of thinking that goes into this, but those that sort of master the base understanding of this, and they get some baselines for their shop and the shirts they use and the printer and the pre-treatment, they can produce phenomenal shirts without wasting ink, wasting pre-treatment. And that all comes down to dollars and cents. If you're over applying pre-treatment, you're just using more pre-treatment than necessary, which is cutting, your profit margin down. Same thing with ink. If you don't have enough pre-treatment or your margin on the pre-treat, you can increase your white ink to make up that difference. But the white ink is actually one of your more expensive components of the process.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you want to find that balance to optimize your profitability, still giving a great print that is going to wash really well.
And it's, again, like a lot of different decoration methods. I'm a big baseball fan. There's a lot of ways you can get a base hit. Sometimes you hit that line drive and it's perfect. Sometimes you bloop it in there, and in the scorebook, it's the same, goes down as the same exact thing. It's a hit. So I feel like a lot of people, they might be putting down not the right amount of pre-treat, but they're finding a way to put down more ink, and it's costing them more, it's taking more time, but they're getting the results. But if they just took a little bit of time to do some experiments, it's amazing what results they can get. And when it comes to printing onto, we'll just use cotton t-shirts because that's the go-to for direct garment printing. I often whenever I essentially help someone with consulting, I advise them to break their shirts up into 3 qualities, which is good, better, and best often. Your good is your value t-shirts. Those are the cheapest jersey, Hanes, Gildan. And then you have your medium quality, which is essentially your ring spun cotton shirts. That cotton is sewn differently. It is softer. It is going to print significantly better. And then you have your premium, which is still going to be a ring spun cotton. It's just nicer. A value shirt, now all of this is quickly changing, especially because of COVID. But a value shirt right now, I just was on sanmar.com, and a Gildan 5000, for example, was going for around $1.85. Now, my favorite shirts to DTG, I love using Sanmar's products. If you've never checked out their fan favorite line, Sanmar manufactures their own products. Porton Company's fan favorite line are all ring spun cotton shirts. They're a medium quality. And what I really love is their sweatshirts are really high quality for the price, and they're 100% cotton on the outside. Sanmar has manufactured these products to make them ideal for DTG. The fan favorite everyday t-shirt is the PC 450, and it's going for around $2 and I think 20 cents. So the difference between the Gildan 5000 and the Porton Company PC 450 is around 40 cents at the moment. Now with COVID at times, the cheapest shirts in the medium quality really got close. I mean, they were coming within like a quarter of one another. I always advise people, if you're doing DTG, if it's within 50 cents, you will save money and pre-treat and ink, and your customer is going to get a better feeling garment all around. Everybody wins when you go with a slightly more expensive garment. And anybody who has used Brothers Pretreat, I know this was definitely the case back in the day, because I've worked with a lot of different people who've told me about it. do know that like Gildan shirts, which I'm not going to put down the Gildan 5000 by any means. If you're a screen print shop, that's a great shirt for the cost to screen
Yeah.
print. And with screen printing, it's a volume game and it's a price. DTG, it's typically more of a one-off, and for that 50 cents, it's a no-brainer in my opinion. But that Gildan 5000, it's great to screen print. But those shirts are dyed and when they're dyed, they're getting water from different rivers. They're using specific. I'm not going to pretend I know the chemistry, but what I can tell you is some of those shirt colors are a disaster to print, and they will stain the garment when you pre-treat it. The cheapest shirts are going to give you a lot more headache. You're going to put down more pre-treat. You're going to put down more ink, and I'll tell you about. I don't know about you, Brian. I have not worn a Gildan 5000 since I put a tri-blend on my back. A lot of customers aren't gonna. If you just put that ring spun cotton in their hand, just 50 cents more, everybody's gonna win when it comes to DTG. Do you kind of agree with that? That a mistake you often see is we try to get too cheap about it.
Everybody assumes it's just a t-shirt. Again, I go back to that. It's just a t-shirt. Correct. And we actually had written an article. I want to say it's actually on our RTP Apparel website. That compares the cost of regular shirts with pre-treating. And that's the big thing, so the RTP line is a fully pre-treated shirt. It's a 30 singles combed ring spun cotton shirt. It's a really nice shirt that we've been working on and continue to perfect as time goes by to make it the best DTG printing shirt out there that you don't even have to do anything to. You pull it out of the bag and you print it. So, and you can print anywhere, sleeves, front, back, even the label if you wanted to print a label inside the shirt.
And RTP stands for ready to print. If you were not aware, that's why he's saying you go straight to the bag. You are eliminating that pre-treat step. And when you're trying to problem solve between is it a pre-treat or is it a printer problem, Brian's product here, the RTP shirts, really allow you to see where the problem is. Correct, yeah. Brian?
Correct.
The shirt's perfect.
Yeah, and that's sort of the whole key. And I just pulled it up here. It's on our shop.rtpapparel.com. But if you go to rtpapparel.com and click on United States, because we have offices in Australia and over in Europe, there's an article that it's at the bottom of the page. It says, why use RTP? They aren't as good as pre-treating yourself. And I detail the cost analysis of using an RTP shirt versus the direct and dissecting the actual cost of pre-treating a shirt yourself. Again, like you said, it comes down to the quality of the shirt. You want to use a good quality shirt because you can reduce the amount of pre-treatment as well as the amount of ink. And the ink is your most expensive component of the process outside of labor and stuff. And it depends on the print, obviously, and how many cc's of ink that you're applying to the shirt. But we discuss, and what a lot of people don't think about, and it frustrates me a lot of times when I see people, oh, it's just a t-shirt. Oh, it doesn't cost me anything to pre-treat. Yeah, it does. It's your time. What's your time worth? And I sort of go into that in this article, and it's like, look, you're as a business owner, your time is invaluable. It really is. And what you need to be doing is focusing on printing and selling and printing. Hopefully getting to the point where you're working on your business and building your business, not working in your business.
Yep.
And that's extremely difficult to do when you're a small shop starting out. I've been there. I've done it multiple times. Trying to bring on help, especially in this time right now. I'm sure it's the same down there in the Columbus area as it is up here. You can't find good people to work, and it's difficult. But I always hear that aspect of, well, it doesn't cost me anything to pre-treat. It's like, no, actually it does. What's your time worth? 60, 80, 100, 150, 200 bucks an hour? And a lot of people short themselves, well, you know, 20 bucks an hour. It's like, no, 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 no. You're never going to grow your business to the point where you can afford other people if you're thinking. You have to change your whole mindset in how to operate a business. So you can work on growing the business and not working in it. And oh my God, I could talk for hours about this, about how to change your mindset. And that's the whole thing with the pre-treating side of it. Is it's such an important process, but it's typically associated with being messy and crappy, and it's not sexy at all. Printing is sexy. You see the immediate results of your work. It's like, wow, that artwork looks awesome on that shirt, versus I'm pre-treating it and this and that. But without the pre-treating, you can't get that incredible looking print. And doing the foundational stuff, it's, I guess you could think of it this way. A basketball player, right? Or like you said, a baseball player, swinging. You know, you can swing and swing and swing, but unless you work on your fundamentals and the form and the follow through and how you swing and the right bat and the right, you know, how far back or in front of the plate you stand and being able to read the balls that comes in, it's the same thing. You got to be able to read the shirt. Okay, the customer wants this shirt. I see the shirt. It's going to require me to pre-treat this way or this much, and I'm going to have to set the printer to this settings to get the best result. That's the difference between your, you know, sandlot baseball player and the Major League Baseball player. The question is which one do you want to be? And taking it from that sandlot, you know, backyard baseball to actual Major League Baseball, it's a lot of work, but the results are so much more worth it. I've seen people build up incredible DTG businesses based on quality, customer service, having the right niche. You know, like you said, a lot of them are one-offs. What you're seeing is a lot more on-demand printing or niche printing. You know, it might be, you might be supplying T-shirts to the underwater basket weaving clubs of the world. Whatever it is, focus on it and be the best at it. And that's the whole key. If you can do that, man, you will have business, you know, probably busier as long as you have there's a market for it, obviously. But as long as you strive to be the best at it, you will always have work and jobs that you can print. And you need to be able to focus on building that and having stuff to print and hiring the correct people to do it so you can focus on growing the business. And it's a lot of small businesses start out that way, and making those steps, it's difficult. And like you said, you have to do the foundational stuff to go from small shop to a much bigger shop. And it's a constant learning process and constant change. And that's where the pre-treating, I see it as, again, it's foundational. You have to apply the correct amount of pre-treatment and do it correctly, which is why I'm such a huge advocate, not because I manufacture and sell pre-treat machines, but because I want to see people be successful in their job. I remember how when we did the install down there, I was so excited for you. I don't know if you remember that conversation way back when.
I do. No, I do. I do remember the whole install process and a few different things you told me about what all the printer could do and where the industry was going with it. I remember, you know, some of those bigger guys, they've got 100 of these and they're cranking them out, shirts out every day. And it's amazing. You know, you see some of these videos online of like, look at that shop with literally 100 DTG machines there, and what all that they're doing. And I know with like now the ink refillable systems and the technology over the past 10 years since you sold me, I mean, I know with your Viper Pretreat machines now, you can literally scan barcodes, which will tell you where to put the Pretreat on the garment and then you can scan that barcode again, and the artwork will print on it. I mean, it's amazing what a lot of these inline technology and capabilities are. And I mean, what's interesting about DTG, it seems like over the past 10 years, and not everybody might agree with this, but it's been kind of one of the most favorite decoration processes for the new shops to purchase and get into.
Yeah.
Screen printing is a lot of variables, and you can outsource screen print transfers, for example, to a lot of different companies, and you can press them and act a lot like a screen print shop. But at least when I was, a lot of shops will tell you no one has artwork that's ready to go, and a lot of them just want a couple shirts with a lot of different colors. Um, every decoration process is complementary primarily to one another. If a mistake I often see with consulting is a shop doesn't have a screen printing solution, or they use DTG as if it were screen printing, or vice versa, and they're not. They're, if I need to print 100 shirts that are one color and I don't have a screen print shop or press, I'm going to buy transfers. It just makes so much more sense as far as speed, quality, everything else. I mean, the direct to garment printer is meant to I'm not saying meant, but what it does best is allow you to meet someone's demands at a no minimum capability with artwork that would never be in play for some of the other processes. For screen printing or embroidery, I got to digitize, vectorize. I mean, it's just not something somebody has always. So no, and again, so I want to bring up like your Viper machines, because I still have my Viper Pretreat machine. I still have my brother direct to garment printer 10 years later. Both are working still great. Why? Because I take care of them, I maintain them, and like Brian mentioned before, 80% of problems with DTG come down to pre-treat. The other 20% primarily come down to your conditions.
Environmental.
Go ahead. Well,
yep. Environmental, humidity levels, keeping the printer clean, Pretreat machine clean. I mean, occasionally you will run into issues with, printers, or like I said before, that can and does happen. But if you're living, we were talking before the podcast, like Arizona right now, or up in Seattle, where typically it's more humid, but they're under 110, 15 degree heat. If you're out in Las Vegas this time of year, you've got 100+ degree heat and like almost 0% humidity. These printers typically require 35+% relative humidity to function well. They actually perform better in the 50 to 60% humidity range.
Absolutely.
Which, if you're in Mississippi, that may not be a problem, because it could be 100% humidity down there. You wake up in the morning and your bread from the day before is already gone moldy, type thing. But it comes down to your environment, keeping the workspace clean, maintaining the equipment. And yes, it is work, but if you do that, it will, like you said, for 10 years, you've got equipment that is still plugging along after 10 years, which is really good.
I mean, as far as the technology goes, yes, have the printers gotten better? Absolutely. The biggest thing that hurts me with still using my current equipment is the cost of the ink and kind of the speed of printing, which everyone's probably like, well, that's a pretty big deal. Direct to garment printing is not my bread and butter anymore. It is something I do on the side more so. But the point being is I can still deliver a great looking print 10 years later by taking care of the equipment. DTG has a lot of maintenance with the equipment, and even a pre-treat machine. Pre-treat in its simplest form, it's glue. I mean, that's how you always explain it to me. It's glue. And whenever you start whenever you start printing, we almost always you have to agitate your white ink for DTG. When it
Yes.
comes to pre-treating, something I learned a long time ago, if you shake and agitate your pre-treat before you start, it's going to work significantly better than if you just had let it sit. Now, I do know that Brian's image armor, what is different than at least Brothers, you have to dilute yourself. Brian's image armor, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it's already diluted. So there's no wondering, is this ready or not? But you still want to shake anything. I mean, it's a chemical process. And something as simple as shaking it, huge difference. It doesn't matter how much pre-treat you lay down if you didn't agitate it to begin with. I mean, and that's why it's a game of variables. Again, if you think in DTG, again, a lot of variables, it's nothing compared to screen printing. You have no idea what screen
Oh,
printing it can be and how many different places you can change something. And same with DTG. You can make, you may think it's a pre-treat problem, but it's actually how much white ink you're putting down, and you're changing the wrong problem. Same with screen printing. If your off contact's off, I don't care what your squeegee angle durometer is. That's not your problem. And you can, so like everything, Brian, I think a lot of it comes down to experience. When you sold me my printer, I was 21. I didn't have as much experience as I do now. And over time, everything gets easier in life. And with direct to garment, the big changes I have seen, I feel over the past 10 years, one of the biggest ones is just the cost of ink. When you sold me my printer, the cost per cc was much more expensive, and now it's come down quite significant for a lot of the printers. It's become, I mean, you'll have to correct me, but I swear the average print is a third of the price practically. I don't know what it really is, but it's really come down significantly. Now with COVID, everything's changing, but the cost of printing a one-off has really come down quite a bit, right, over the last 10 years?
yeah. And in comparison, it's like with any new technology, the price of the ability to do whatever you're doing goes down as time goes by. In the early days, there was no competition. And a lot of these companies, it was new technology. There was a lot of recoupment cost. So the consumables were considerably more expensive. And that's part of what led us into doing what we're doing now is, one, we wanted to make things better, because I've been on both sides of the fence. I've had my own shop, both screen print and digital, to selling it as a distributor, to now as a manufacturer. And what I love to see, and I get excited about, when I was excited when I did the install for you way back when, 10 years ago, I get excited when I see people with great ideas and ambition. I want to see people be successful. And one of the ways we realized we could do that, outside of encouraging people and maybe selling a printer or whatever, was to create the products like the pre-treatments and inks, and now the shirts, to help people be successful. I get a lot of joy and excitement out of seeing people with these ideas and then taking those ideas and bringing them to fruition, and utilizing our product to help them achieve those goals. And we've seen some really small shops go really big using our products, and we've converted some really, really big shops over to our products. Why? Because you can save money, it works better, or whatever. Some shops, they find out they just, for whatever reason, they can't make it work in their shop, and that's okay. But the cost of everything has come down. Even with a lot of the regular inks, when we first came out with our E-Series inks for a lot of the Epson repurposed printers, the standard rate for white ink was anywhere from, $200, $240 to $300+ a liter. And we brought ours out at $125 a liter. That's a huge savings. That's 12.5 cents a cc versus 25 to 30 cents a cc. And considering ink is one of your biggest components, if you're putting 6 to 10 cc's of ink on a shirt, that could be $2.50, $3 per shirt with a regular ink versus, you know, a buck and a quarter. So,
Yep.
and like you said, being one-offs, it comes down to, or even, you know, small short run stuff or whatever your business model is. It comes down to dollars and cents, and it's not just what the pre-treat costs, but again, small shops often don't take into account the time, their time, the labor, the overhead, the expense of electric for what you're doing, all these different factors, and just the time it takes to do something has to go into the cost of the shirt. And the biggest mistake, and it frustrates me, is like, well, my time's free. No, it's not. That we need to change that attitude, because you will never really be successful. You might be successful just out of dumb luck with that type of thinking, but you have to build in your costs, because your time is valuable. You're the one that's making this happen. And, you know, the product that you're doing and the process you're doing has value. And if people fully grasp, like I said, I could talk for hours and hours and hours about this, like you said, just because I've been in the industry so long. But I get excited when I see the potential of what people are doing. And it's like, hey, if you do this, you could actually save more money, which is going to go to your bottom line, which is going to increase your profitability, which is going to allow you to expand and buy more equipment and improve and get better, and maybe buy that second printer, and, you know, et cetera, or hire that extra person to allow you to focus on sales and growing the business and being able to hire more people and grow. Because for small business people, it's difficult to grow their business, because let's face it, we're control freaks. I'm sure you're probably not much different than I am. But I've realized over time that, okay, like you said earlier, you know, you may not need to do screen printing in-house. You can outsource it to somebody that does, or buy the heat transfers and you do your direct to garment in-house. But being able to realize and find the value of people that can help you in your business and grow the business, and find more efficient ways to pre-treat, or a more cost-effective ink or pre-treatment, or a more cost-effective shirt. Yeah, okay, this shirt might cost you, let's say, $1 more. Let's even, you said 50 cents earlier. Let's say even $1 more, but you're going to use less pre-treatment and less ink. If ink is your most expensive component, and you can save $1.50 on ink, or let's say even $1 just on your ink cost, because you can put less down, that dollar you paid more for the shirt, and a better end product for the customer is going to be happier. It's going to generate more revenue for you over the long term than using a lower quality shirt that the print's okay, but the shirt's you know. So there's a lot of variables people really don't take into account. And that's what I find exciting, is just trying to help people find their niche market. You know, some people, they cater, I've seen DTG printers, they just cater to the low end market. They really don't care about the shirt quality or the print quality. It's a one-off. They're only going to wear it one time. Who cares? They're never going to buy from us again. Yeah. There are business models out there like that. I don't advocate that, because it makes the rest of us look bad.
But, you know, well, I'll tell you, when DTG was getting popular 10, 15 years ago, right when I was getting in the industry, I remember talking with some screen print shops and being like, you ever going to get into DTG? And a lot of them just looked at it as, no, it's terrible. It'll never compete. And it's amazing how that thinking has really changed. It really has changed. A lot of people were anti-DTG. No. Not anymore. And again, a lot of shops, that's all they do. And just some artwork I look at it, it's like, you should be screen printing this with this quantity and so forth. I mean, if you have, yeah. So, you know, you're so right about working on the business versus in. And the biggest cost that you know, when you take business classes, they'll tell you the business cost you have is opportunity cost. If
Yeah.
your time is spent doing something, you can't do something else. And that's what's going to hold you back from growing. Um, that's where it's a difference between, being, just the shop that makes money to kind of becoming that company that sustains itself and you don't have to be a part of it. But something you mentioned there that has really changed over time, and I think a lot of viewers may not even realize that they might be using your ink, not only your pre-treat. So when it comes to pre-treat and a pre-treat machine, it's totally independent of the printer itself.
Correct.
So, if you're using a Brother, printer, and you could be using Brother Pretreat, they're made to work with one another, and Brother's Pretreat will work with Brian's Viper machine. But
Correct.
using Brian is manufacturer. I mean, again, when I say manufacturer, Brian really is designed from scratch equipment, work with chemists to create these chemicals. I mean, Brian knows what he's talking about here. When it comes to the pre-treat itself, though, it goes with the machine. It's not going to ever truly come in contact with the printer, just the actual ink. But the ink cartridges themselves, everybody has inkjet laser printers. And we all are told from the get-go, you have to buy the cartridges from this manufacturer or you're going to destroy your printer.
Yeah.
And over time, we've all kind of started to learn like, oh my God, I could get these for like a fifth of the price. If I buy these and it does destroy my printer, if I get half of the use out of them, I could buy a new printer for less than it cost me to buy all that new ink. And that's what my thinking is often the time. And
And to be honest with you, the biggest, and it's sort of frustrating, and I understand why the printer manufacturers say it will quote unquote void their warranty. Um, that's the biggest misconception out there. There have been court cases, Supreme Court cases, and stuff like that that show they can't refuse you service on the machine, quote, because you use a third-party ink. And in reality, everything is advanced. Even our inks have advanced so much that it's not going to be detrimental. Actually,
I see better results. I've tried them. They're better. They're better.
Exactly. And that's the funny thing. It's like okay, just like in our E series inks, not necessarily the B, which is what you would have for your 782 or the GT3. The original inks for most of the repurposed printers back in the day were DuPont inks, and they were more expensive. We came out with ours. Theirs was a 90-second cure time for wet ink. Ours is 35 seconds. Prints, and it prints better and this and that. And people are like, "Whoa, you can't do only DuPont can create, pre-treatment and inks and this." And that's the uphill battle we always fought and probably always will, because we don't have a name like DuPont or, Brother or whatever. But our inks actually, being a smaller company, being more nimble, being able to change direction quicker and implement new things and all that, has allowed us to, I think, create a better product at a better price, which allows people to be more profitable. And again, if you are more comfortable using an OEM ink in your printer, that's fine. Do that. That's a personal decision with the business. It's like the same with pre-treatment. It's, oh, you got to use this pre-treatment for this. No, you don't have to. Our pre-treatments actually work with pretty much every directed garment printer out there but Kornit. And I would expect probably most of the people listening to this podcast aren't using a $100,000 Kornit printer.
Yep.
So, and it gets back to the we were talking earlier about pre-treating white shirts. You don't need to pre-treat a white shirt.
Should.
But the quality difference and the wash durability and just the color vibrancy and all that, what can be added to the direct-to-garment printing process, you can do stuff that you could never do screen printing. Like, for example, white polyester. Okay, now obviously if you have sublimation, that's going to be the best avenue to decorate a white polyester shirt, right? Typically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but if you don't have that option and you have a direct-to-garment printer, our light shirt formula on a white polyester shirt will make it look like sublimation and will help it wash really similar to sublimation. If you don't have pre-treatment on a polyester shirt, polyester is typically designed to wick moisture away, right? It's a performance fabric. So since we're using water-based inks, it wants to wick that moisture away. So your definition of the dots that are being sprayed out of your printer, the dot gain is incredible. And we've actually had this measured. It can be 300 to 400% dot gain. So your little dot that's just microns wide grows 300 to 400%, which means technically the way inkjet works is you're putting all these colors sort of next to each other, right? And your eye perceives the colors accordingly to the way they're laid out, and they're jetted. Now, if those inks mix, what happens when you mix yellow and blue, cyan and yellow? It's like the Ziploc bags. Green. Yellow and blue make green, right? Well, it muddies it up if your dot grows, so your yellow dot grows next to your blue dot, and both of them grow 300% and mix into each other, you're going to get a muddier color than you would if you had those dots staying where they're supposed to. Visually, because they're so small and so close together, you would see a really nice sharp green, or whatever colors you're mixing with your CMYK inks. When they grow, they mix together. You can get secondary colors and even tertiary colors that aren't supposed to be in the design. And a lot of the times, that's why your image looks blurry or sort of muddy. And I'm sure people have seen that before. Whereas when you use like the light shirt formula for CMYK printing, especially on polyester, you can get super bright, vibrant prints, and the details is incredible because you're holding those dots in place. And it's even on a cotton shirt, you're going to get the same results, or a 50-50 shirt. You're going to get better image clarity, vibrancy, wash durability. And it's just simple little things like that. If you do that, you can up your game and even print on various products that normally might not think about doing with your direct-to-garment printer, like polyester shirts.
Yeah, I think a mistake a lot of shops do make is they don't pre-treat a white shirt, and it's night and day better. It is so vibrant compared to just letting the ink just saturate into the garment without that primer, essentially.
Yeah.
So again, to kind of wrap up today's conversation, direct-to-garment printing, it really started coming pop, it kind of gave birth around 15, 20 years ago, around 10, 15 years ago. It really started catching fire. The last 10 years, oh my gosh, we've seen an evolution with it. But one thing that has always maintained consistent, a huge part, I mean, again, it's the whole start of it, comes down to pre-treating. And pre-treating, like every decoration process in the industry, there's a little bit of an art to it, and there's some chemistry. Experience will come into play, but every garment is different. If you ever think that you're going to just have a turnkey solution for every scenario, think again. Even with, I've even seen it with Gildan shirts. You could buy the same color shirt, and some of them are manufactured in one part of the world, some are manufactured somewhere else, and you get completely different results.
Yes.
That's where it also comes down to, when it comes to pre-treating and printing with DTG, try to go with the ring spun. If you spend 50 cents to $1 more, everybody's going to significantly win. You're going to cut your costs down, you're going to get a better looking print, and the customer is going to be happier because of that, but also because they are wearing a better feeling garment itself as well. So it just makes so much sense. When it comes to pre-treating, if you're going to be accurate, you really should be using a machine. Brian's company. He manufactures, and Brian designed himself, the Viper line of Pretreat machines. He currently has 3 different machines. We all know that the industry is full of mom and pop shops that are just getting started. Some shops are huge, doing hundreds of shirts, if not thousands a day, and they need bigger solutions. And Brian's equipment has those solutions for every size shop. And then he also has the pre-treat and inks that go along with it. And I understand, you spend tens of thousands of dollars on a piece of equipment and you're afraid to use an ink cartridge that was not manufactured by your manufacturer of your printer. Definitely give it a try. It's amazing what the results are. Not only are you going to save yourself some serious money, I'm definitely convinced, and I've talked to a lot of people who agree, you're going to get better results. Brother, and in my opinion, and I've dealt with Brother quite a bit, and I'm not going to put down Brother at all. Brother makes a hell of a product. Yes, I still have my 782 10 years later. I love my one-head embroidery piece of equipment. Brother is a great company. Rollin, Epson, they are monster companies who take a lot of pride in their equipment. Where they fail, at least in my opinion, with Brother, is when I would need to buy consumables or I had questions or problems. Their service, these bigger companies are harder to work with and to get information and so forth. Brian, he actually happens to be the reason why he sold me my printers, because we are in the same great state of Ohio, and his not his shop, but his company where he manufactures the equipment and distributes his supplies is here in Ohio. And whether it be the ink, the pre-treat, the Viper, you can reach out to Brian's company, iGroup Technologies. Again, we have a slew of brands here. So he has the Viper pre-treat line. Go to directtoshirt.com. That's also where you can get Image Armor Pretreat. There's tons of distributors of the Image Armor Pretreat. And then RTP Apparel, ready to print shirts. If you're ever wondering, and is it coming down to my pre-treat or my printer? When it comes to testing something, you've got to have controlled variables, and having an already pre-treated shirt is a great way to start. But in general, not everybody wants to go through the messy process of pre-treating and so forth. And again, like Brian said, you got to look at what is your time worth and so forth. You could just take that shirt, press it to get the wrinkles and the moisture out of it, throw it on the press, print it, cure it, call it a day. So we have, Brian has essentially created a lot of different great technology to make the act of printing better. It does not matter how great of a printer you buy, you have to pre-treat that garment properly. And definitely give Image Armor ready to print tees, and definitely be looking at the Viper pre-treat equipment if you don't have a pre-treat machine already. Again, I bought one of Brian's first models, and I'm sure he's made a lot of adjustments since then, but the technology is still working great today. So I can personally attest that definitely Brian knows what he's talking about, and takes pride in what he manufactures. So take a look at the inks, the equipment. Brian, thank you so much for your input today. We'll definitely have you again on in the future for other conversations, because as you know, COVID, we've never had, you've talked about being in the industry for decades. You never had a year like the past year. And something that I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes open to is just the difference in cost of everything. We've all seen it with shirts, how crazy the prices have been changing. I've seen equipment changing. So the industry is always going to be changed after the year of COVID. A lot of shops shut down, others gained their business. So we'll definitely have you back again in a future episode and talk more about the industry in general, and again, where we see the direct-to-garment pre-treat world going, it is something that, you know, every size shop has embraced that I've worked with. A lot of, again, it sometimes it's the first piece of equipment after buying a heat press for shops. Other shops who first saw the technology didn't like it. Now it's the second thing behind screen printing or embroidery. So again, it's an evolving industry, and always be testing. Don't assume that just because your sales rep who sold you your equipment and so forth has actually done a lot of this printing themselves. That's something I think you would agree with, Brian. A lot of reps, they've never done the production themselves. They don't realize how much work and everything goes into it. And, you know, working with somebody who's been in the industry, and again, talk to other shops who do DTG printing and so forth, and get their feedback. A lot of them, I bet you, are using, again, some of Brian's technology, and will tell you, hey, you know, by going from this to this, not only did I save money, but I got a better end product. I've got better durability in my prints and so forth. So just don't assume that what a rep tells you is what it is. Sometimes you got to do some testing yourselves, and you know, just trying some different pre-treat. You know, what does it cost, Brian, for just a smaller container? You know, $50.
Actually, if they go to Image Armor PT for pretreatment.com, so imagearmorpt.com, we actually have a try before you buy, and I'm going to pull that up right now to make sure it is on the front page. But it's a link, you can click on it, and it basically, you fill out the form, and we'll send it to you for free. Yeah, it's right under the 2 videos, about halfway down the page. It says click here, try before you buy. Fill out the form. We'll send out a quart of the Ultra and a quart of the Light Shirt formulas for people to try for free. That's how much we believe in it, because 90+% of the people that actually try it realize it works. They can save money. And it's just a good product. That's why we do that. We believe in it.
Oh yeah, no, and typically nothing is truly free, but it sounds like you are really giving it to them for free. All they got to do is take the time to properly apply it and compare it. And you know, it's something like with Brothers machine, Brian's Viper machine. You can't do this with 2 types of pre-treat at the same time, but just being able to use different. You know, my machine he built 6 years ago or 10 years ago has 6 different heads. I only want to pre-treat part of the shirt. I can. So definitely check out his website. We'll have a link to it along with this video, so you can then try his pre-treat. Thank you for viewing. Thank you, Brian, for being a guest. And again, we'll have you back again in the near future.
I appreciate it, Zach. It was fun. It was my pleasure, and I'll be back anytime you want. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, everyone, enjoy your day.